Hi everybody, very welcome to yet another live stream. I hope you're doing absolutely fantastic. Those of you who are here, if this is the first time that you see one of my live streams, then I'll let you know a little bit about how this works, okay? I will be on here for as long as you guys want me to. I will answer questions both from the normal chat that you see here on YouTube and from the Mentor Aviation app. And also, if you have something that you really want to ask me, then I would advise you to use the super chat. Okay, the super chat will donate some money to the channel and to the work that I do with the channel. But I do guarantee that I will answer all of the questions that comes up. And I'm still using my little mobile internet that I have here in Spain, which means that if it cuts out, do not leave. I'm going to try to reconnect. Okay. First of all, a huge shout out to the members of my Patreon crew. You guys, you are amazing. You are the ones that are helping me to really build this channel, and you are the ones that are checking my videos before I release them, giving feedback to them. It's absolutely great to have the backup from you guys, and you know who you are. And if you want to take part in my Patreon crew and you want to join the Patreon crew, then here in the description of the video you'll find a link to my Patreon page. You can go there, you can check it out, and if you think it's something for you, please sign up. Right guys, so let's see who have we here. We have Mark Jones, good afternoon. Smart Technics, oh there's loads of you guys here, it's lovely. And I want to say a special welcome to all of the new members of the Mentor family. It's great to see how many have joined during the last few days. I'm really humbled by the support that you have been showing me. I really hope that I can repay that to you by continuing to produce good content and answer your questions. I've been getting loads of more questions, and you can expect that the theme that I'm into now, which is kind of explaining stuff about the 737 and its peculiar design features and stuff of the 737, will continue. All right, I will do another few videos on that subject before I switch to the next subject, because it looks like there's a lot of people out there who are curious. Okay, let's see. Do we have any questions here that we can start with, or should we just, do the intro first and let some more people join in before we continue? I think we'll do that. Stay tuned. And we are back. So I'm going to start off with some questions from the Mentor Aviation app. If you haven't already downloaded, you should definitely do so, because the app is on fire now. It's more and more people that's joining all the time, which means that the chat is becoming more and more interesting. And we're uploading more and more documentaries and stuff like that every single day almost. So if you're there, check it out. There's loads of knowledge in there now that you guys who want to be pilots, or if you're just aviation enthusiasts, should really look into. Okay, so from Paras it looks like you're coming from India. Mentor, is cadet pilot program worth? Please tell. 80% of Indian future pilots wants to know this. That depends on what you mean. Okay, there is some confusion out there when it comes to what a cadet program is versus a integrated program and a modular program. All right. So when you say cadet program, I think of programs that are connected to airlines. Those might be special non-sponsored programs, but that you have to pay for the training, but after you've done your training, you will then be entered into an airline. Those tend to be a little bit more expensive. Whether or not they're worth it, that's going to be up to you and your financial situation, okay? I think that it's always a good thing if you have a firm offer of employment after your training. So that might be worth a couple of maybe 10 or 20,000 euros to know that once you have done your CPL, multi-engine instrument rating, MCC course, jet orientation course, that at the end of that there will be an airline that will take you up and give you a type rating, for example. If you can afford it, it's probably a good idea. But if you're referring to cadet programs as in integrated programs versus modular, then it's a little bit more questionable, all right, if it's worth it or not. Because these integrated programs tend to be really expensive, almost as expensive as the ones that are backed up by airlines in the background. And so to say that you pay 110,000 euros or something for an integrated program, you can get away with probably half of that doing it modular. And at the moment, at least in Europe, there's a huge demand for pilots. Okay, that means that if you've paid half as much, you might still have a fairly good chance to get a job afterwards if you played your cards right and you have good pass scores and stuff like that. So I would probably, if it's up to me, if I had to pay for my training today, I would probably look for a way to do the thing modular to keep the costs down, and then I would finish it off with a really expensive and good MCC course at the end with an airline, sorry, with a flight school that might have a good reputation that I could kind of use when I'm done applying for airlines. So I would probably do it that way. But well, I hope that makes sense to you guys. If you might have more questions about this, I have loads of people now who are in the Mentour Aviation app. If you go into the flight schools section there on the video, there will be a list of people who are in different flight schools who are there now, who are there to answer your questions. Just go in there and talk to them, because they will be able to give you first-hand information about things like flight schools, for example. Right, let's see. We'll take something from the chat as well. Since there's no one in the super chat yet, I'll just take something on a random here. Should I do my training in modular or integrated? I'm 14 and 10 hours towards my PPL. Well, if you've started your PPL, it means that you're already going down the route of modular, because the integrated program tends to include the PPL as well. So unless you want to redo the PPL stage, then you're already into the modular route. But like I said before, it depends on your financial availability, your what kind of where you live, what your life circumstances are. So that's the way to go look at it. Okay, so Tom Benjamin, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I have a few arm tattoos. Will that stop me? No. I did a video on that actually. There's loads of videos, guys, that you can check out. If you just scroll down, if you go into to the Mentour Pilot channel and you just scroll down, you'll find that there's loads and loads of videos. I've done a couple of 100 different videos on different subjects, and tattoos is one of them. Okay, so when it comes to tattoos, you have to be a little bit smart, right? Airlines don't want you as an employee to show off tattoos that passengers can see. All right, so I would definitely avoid having tattoos on your neck, for example, or up on your face, obviously, or very far down on your hands, because you want to be able to cover them up with a normal working shirt. But if you can do that, then having tattoos is very rarely a problem. Okay, it's just a matter of using your common sense. So if you can show it, if you can hide it, it's good. Oliver Matsalu, thank you very much. Super chat. Hi Mentor, why different airlines have different SOPs with the same aircraft type? That's a really good question. That's probably something that I will do a video on quite soon. But the short answer to that is that it's up to the individual airline to decide how they are going to fly their aircraft. Okay, and in most airlines, they are taking on. They already had maybe a different aircraft type before, an older aircraft type. Their pilots are used to certain call-outs, to certain SOPs, and then what they do is they use the old SOPs they had and they adapt them onto the new aircraft type. That's why Boeing has a standard set of SOPs. Like Boeing has, this is how we want you to do things. And then the airlines can choose to use parts of that. They should probably use most of it, but they can also put in their own SOPs, and that's what tends to happen. So that's why you'll see it kind of branching out, where the general SOPs are fairly similar, but then as the years goes on, they become more and more different. And then on top of that, you also have to adapt your SOPs to the level of experience that you have in your airline. So for example, an airline that has like a flag carrier that only have pilots that have 10,000 hours or more, because that's what you have when you join them, they can have SOPs that are a little bit more slack. Okay, a little bit softer SOPs, maybe not outlining exactly what the pilots need to do in certain situations. They can kind of choose a little bit for themselves. But that's because they're now relying on the experience of the pilots. Now, instead, if you're going to an airline that have a very low level of experience, so the low-fare airlines are taking in a lot of new pilots coming in straight from flight school, well, in that case, the SOPs needs to be really, really rigid, because that's the only thing that these cadets have to hold on to, all right? They need to know what to do and what to say in every given situation until they have kind of amassed as much experience so that they can figure these things out for themselves. So that's why you'll see that, for example, the low-fare airlines have very, very specific, quite complicated SOPs, while the older flag carriers might have much less SOPs. and that's where it comes from. So I hope that that makes sense. CA97, how long do you think the demand for pilots in Europe is going to last? Now, this is a really, really tricky question to answer, all right? And the reason that it is tricky to answer is because it's really, really depending on outside factors. So at the moment, if you look at just the order stock that is in Norwegian, Ryanair, EasyJet, Air France, the Gulf companies, the Chinese market is booming. If you look at that, the demand is going to go on forever. Okay, there's going to be need for pilots for a long, long time, and we also have the baby boomers, the ones that were born in the 1950s that are starting to retire or finishing retirement now, and that's a big part of the pilot body. So they are being replaced continuously, and they need more pilots for that. And then you have huge expansions. All right, so that's one side of it. That talks for continuous need for pilots for many, many years to come. However, on the other side, you never know what's going to happen. And the aviation business is extremely volatile, very, very prone to sudden shifts if something major happens. So, for example, Donald Trump decides to attack North Korea. Okay, he does that, and North Korea retaliates and starts a war in that region, maybe even nuclear, but let's say it's not even nuclear. Let's say it's like Iraq or Afghanistan. But it affects the oil price, so the oil price shoots up, security is changed. There might be other sanctions being involved installed as well that spreads through the economic market. In that case, whenever you have a disruption like that, it hits the aviation world really, really hard. That's what happened after 9/11. 9/11 was a huge blow to the airline market worldwide, and it took almost a decade to recover from that. So if something like that happened, then all bets are off. Right, then the aviation market can snap like that, and all of a sudden all of the airlines are stopping their orders. There's a surplus of aircraft sitting outside in the desert, and there is no demand anymore. All right, so that might happen, but it's very hard to say. Generally speaking, the way it looks now, I think it looks very positive. I've never seen the market as good as it is right now. Okay, but you know as much as me when it comes to how that's going to look if something happens out in the world that we cannot foresee. No one saw 9/11 coming, for example. Young aviators. Why have some airlines stopped doing cadetships? Because they don't have to. Okay, so the airline market is a very much depending on access and demand. All right, so supply and demand, I should say. That means that if there's a lot of pilots available, and the airlines do not need to pay for their training, and the airlines might be under like financial hardship, the first thing they're going to shed is things that they do not need to pay for. So if let's say that an airline X needs 50 pilots during the year, all right, they have a cadetship that provides 25 to 51 of those pilots, but in that cadetship, they have to pay for the training. They have to, maybe pay salary, in the really good ones, and things like that. And then they look at it and they see that if we just put out on the internet that we need 50 pilots, all of a sudden 50 already trained pilots are applying. Well, in that case, they're not going to pay for the cadetship. All right. So that's what happened during many, many years after 9/11, for example. It went from loads of these good old flag carriers paying for training for a lucky few, just stopped doing that, and they just took in pilots from other airlines or directly from the market. Okay. Now, what we're starting to see now, which is something that I really like, something that I, with my channel, is trying to actively push for, is that it's turning the other way around. So we're lacking pilots, all right? The bigger airlines are trying to find pilots, they're competing for pilots, and what happens then is that they start to introduce these things. They start by probably starting by paying the type ratings, or maybe bonding you for paying for the type ratings. They've done that already for a few years. The next step is going to be what we saw just last week, where Air France opened up their cadetship again, which are great news. I'm guessing British Airways are probably going to be the next ones that continuously start checking in and paying for training. There was a downturn in Lufthansa Flying School was paying for training or bonding for training for a while. Then they went away from that, and now it looks like they're going to pick that up again. So now we're seeing what happens when the airlines need pilots. In that case, they start paying for it. But if they don't have to, they won't. And that's the answer to your question. So, Omicron and Hedge Productions. Do you have any glider type rating? No, I don't. Actually, I've been trying gliding, all right, but just once. Gliding is an absolutely amazing sport. It's a fantastic way of getting into understanding aviation and the airlines, not the airlines, but aviation in general. So I highly recommend it, and it's something that you can start at a fairly low age as well. In Sweden, at least, you can get a glider license when you're 15 years old, which means that you can get a little bit of taste of flying already at that age. So I highly recommend it, but it's not something that I've been doing. Okay. Right, difference in salary between low cost and regular. That's a hard question. Okay, and the reason that it's hard is because it's very hard to compare apples with oranges, right? The reason I'm saying that is that, for example, a captain that has been working 10 years for a low fare airline is probably going to be paid slightly less than a captain that has been working as a captain 10 years for a legacy airline, okay, for one of the gold flag carriers. The difference is not going to be huge. It can be if the North American market, for example, you get paid very much, and the Chinese market you get paid a lot as well. In that case, it can be over 100,000 euros in difference of annual salary. But what you have to remember as well is that in order for you to get into a flag carrier, all right, when you get your entry position, first officer position in an old flag carrier, they don't tend to pay that much. Okay, you're paid as little or less than what you get in the low fare airlines as a first officer. But you have a continuous ladder where you kind of climb up and you get a little bit more salary each year you stay. But also it might take you 10 to 15 years to get command. All right, now keep that in mind. So if you've been waiting 10 to 15 years on a first officer salary, that over those 10, 15 years, if you've been in, for example, a low fare airline like Ryanair or EasyJet or Norwegian, the first 3 or 4 years you will be on a first officer salary, but then, given that those companies are rapidly expanding and they need more and more captains, when you get the experience and you played your card right and you have done well for yourself, well then you will have the chance to upgrade to a captain. So now you are bumping up to a captain salary, okay, after 4 years. Let's say after 4 years. Now the first officer that joined the legacy carrier will still have another 8 to 10 years to go on a first officer salary, and now in the low fare sector you are being paid more as a captain than a first officer. All right, in some airlines, the first officer salary does come up close to a captain salary in low fare airlines, but anyway, you can expect the difference to be quite big there. And in the low fare airlines, you will then be a captain during those 8 years where you will be taking home this salary, and 8 years is a big part of your working life. So you have to amass all of that money and put that into one pile. And then, after those 8 to 10 years, then the other person becomes a captain on the flag carrier, start maybe bumping up the salary a little bit above where the low fare captain might be. But then you have to then see how long are you going to stay employed, and is that going to be a long-term benefit or not. So as you can see, it's not about just, all right, so who has the best salary, let's go there. You have to think of your salary in a career perspective in order to understand this. All right, as with everything, I'm getting, that's another thing actually I wanted to say. So I'm getting a lot of slack from new viewers, especially coming into the channel, who's saying that my explanations are way too long. Saying, you could have said that in 15 seconds. Why did it take you 7 minutes to explain about the engines being flat on the 7, or the engine inlets being flat on the 737? The thing is, though, in order for you to understand anything in this world, especially in the aviation world, you need to have the background. You need to understand the background, and you need to understand the technical applications that have been used in order to understand fully what it is that you see. Now, of course, I can go in and I can say, for example, but on the question, why do airplanes fly? Well, I can go in and I can say, well, airplanes fly because of air moving over the wings at a high airspeed. Yeah, that doesn't say much, does it? But Of course, that only took me 5 seconds to do. Then I could do a video where I'm actually explaining the difference, in, for example, Newton's third law of physics, the Bernoulli effect, how those two things are combined in order to create the lift that we need in order for an aircraft to fly, how different forces are being applied on the airframe in order to keep the aircraft flying at a constant altitude, and I can spend a lot more time doing that. Okay, so, and this is what I'm intending to do. I have been struggling a lot to get my videos down to 7 minutes. Um, if you look at my older videos, you'll notice that they're like 15, 20, 25 minutes long. When I do a briefing before any simulator session, and you will have to remember this, any simulator session that you will ever have is going to be a minimum of 1 hour long. Okay, in most cases, 1.5 hours. So 1.5 hours of just briefing of what you're going to do, and that's with you knowing already what it is that you're going to do. So if you cannot handle a 7 minute long video explaining something, then you are going to have a problem in your training. All right, I'll just put that out there right now. Cool. So let's see. More questions then. Jordan calls in the super chat. Thank you very much, Jordan. Is landing a plane on a 3 to 4 lane motorway an option in an emergency situation? Right. Great question. Yes, it is an option. However, as an airline captain, I always have to let's say I've lost both engines. Okay, we're doing the memory items to try to recover the thrust on at least one engine, but it's unsuccessful. Now, what I'm looking at then is that I'm going to try to put my aircraft down in a place that is as safe as possible. Okay, so I will want to find a place which is fairly free of obstacles, that is, has a potential of maybe keeping the landing gear intact. That way, there's a much higher likelihood of as many people as possible to survive. However, I also have to take into account loss of life on the ground. Okay, and this is where it becomes a little bit tricky when it comes to a motorway, because if I'm coming in towards a motorway, there might be hundreds of people traveling on that motorway. Okay, and I don't want to crash into 50 cars. That might severely damage the aircraft. Of course, it's going to kill loads of people in those cars. So it's going to be dependent on how the situation looks. All right, it might be better to, if I can find a field next to a really busy highway, and put the aircraft down there. But if I see a big, clear, broad, straight highway, which is, maybe I only have a few cars on it or whatever, then yeah, I will put on whatever lights I have in the cockpit, and I'm going to steer towards that and try to put the aircraft down. All right, so it's very hard. This is why decision making is so hard, because you might be sitting in one moment drinking a cup of coffee thinking what you're going to do at home, and in the next moment you're in this situation where you have to choose where you're going to put the aircraft down, and depending on where you put it down, there's going to be higher or lower likelihood of survival. So this is tricky stuff, all right, and it's not as easy as people might think when you first look at it. Alan Lumsden, have a coffee on me. Thank you. I will have your coffee tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock when I have driven for 2 hours down to Barcelona. I will definitely need it then. So thank you very much. So let's see. Let's take some more questions then. Have you ever flown a fighter in a fighter? Which is your favorite plane? I've never flown a fighter. I would love to try to fly a fighter. I wouldn't want to work flying a fighter. Okay. My favorite plane, so that depends. I'm always saying the Concorde because I think it's a beautiful aircraft, the 747. But now the newer aircraft as well, the Airbus 350. I would love to get my hands on that. I think it's a beautiful aircraft. The Boeing 787, obviously. And when it comes to the best looking aircrafts, the 757 is quite high on the list there as well. I think it looks like a bird of prey. Like it's a beautiful aircraft, and it has the longer landing gear. And those of you who have seen my latest videos about why the Boeing 737NG and the classic engines are flattened at the bottom, you will also know why the 757 have those kind of bird-like legs on them. So everything is connected. Okay, what airline do you work for? I'll take that one, as I do on every live stream, and I'll explain that I have an agreement with my airline where they are happy with me having this channel talking about aviation in general, talking about not terms and conditions, but general stuff about being a pilot, okay? But they've asked me to please leave them out of it. Do not use their logo, do not mention them, do not talk about them. The reason is not because they don't want to be associated with the channel. They're clearly happy, at least with some stuff that I do, but I am not a spokesperson for my airline. I am just a pilot for my airline. I'm a type rating examiner, and I'm a line training captain. And if I would go out and I would put a big logo on my channel saying that this is the airline I work for, I will be wearing their stuff and their logos, what would happen is that people would start to assume that what I am saying is actually their voice and their opinion, and it's not. I am not a spokesperson for my airline. I'm a spokesperson only for me, for my own situation, my own experiences, but I do not represent the airline I fly for. Okay, I might do. They might ask me to go out in a public forum somewhere and speak on their behalf, which I would be happy to do, all right, because I am employed by them. But in the capacity of being a YouTuber, I am not. All right, and that's why I never speak about my airline. It's not a secret. Anyone can find it out. It's actually really simple. Most of you probably know already, but I'm not going to speak about it. I hope that makes sense for everyone. Steven Scholte in the super chat. Weight and balance is very important. What would happen if all passengers would go to the back of the plane during a flight? Yeah, that wouldn't be good. Maybe you might have seen, if you haven't already, you should probably look at it after this video. Okay, the 747 who crashed in Afghanistan because of load shifts. Okay, because some of the cargo got loose during climb out and it fell back into the back of the aircraft. Have a look at that video, and you will have an idea of what would happen if we would have a severe shift of weight and balance towards the aft of the aircraft. Now, should say that most passenger airlines can handle that. Okay, in flight, even if all passengers would decide to run toward the back, for example, in the case of a fire in the front galley, the aircraft we will be able to handle it. However, we would have problems landing it. Okay, so weight and balance is something I will do a video about. Okay, I'm actually planning a video about that as we speak. From a more passenger related point of view, but weight and balance is one of the things that you need maths for. All right, the reason that I'm telling you all the time that you need maths and physics is because you need to do weight and balance calculations. That has to do a lot with mathematics, basically physics. You need to understand how to balance an aircraft out and how different forces act on different arms on the aircraft in order to achieve balance. Okay. Hi Peter, does the Boeing 737 have ABS brakes? Yeah, it does. We call it anti-skid. Okay, it's an anti-skid system and it works exactly like an ABS system. It is on every landing, the brake system will feel the deceleration rate, and if it feels that it's getting into aquaplaning, hydroplaning, or that it's slippery, then it will release the brakes, okay? And it will reapply until it feels that it's releasing again. So you will get that characteristic kind of feel to it. And if it's really slippery, so if you're landing on an ice-covered runway, for example, it might not brake at all, okay? Because when the anti-skid system feels that the wheels are, stopping, it will release the brake pressure and modulate it, and it might be continuously modulating, which effectively means that it's not braking. Now, this is why it's so important that you have a reverses when it starts to be slippery, because in effect, if you're landing on a runway with very low braking action, it's going to be the reverses and the air resistance and your spoilers that is going to stop you. Okay. This is why on a dry runway, when we calculate the landing distance on a dry runway, it doesn't matter if you have reverses or not, right? The reverses will not have an effect at all on the braking distance, because the brakes are, the tires are sitting on dry runway, they can be utilized to its maximum, so the reverses will have very little effect. The only thing that the reverses will do is that they will take some of the energy away from the brakes, so that we have less heat in the brakes, so that we need less cooling time for the brakes on the ground. So that we do use the reverses for that on dry runways. However, when the runways start to be slippery, then if you take with reverses or non-reverses, there's going to be an enormous difference in landing distance because of the ABS and the well, in this case, the anti-skid system. So yeah, they do. Cool. Papa Seria Mike Rip. If you're in the super chat, thank you very much. As someone else asked, will pilots eventually become unemployed when AI becomes good enough to safely fly aircraft autonomously? Yeah. The answer to that question is yes. That will happen. All right. But I have done a video on this that is going to make you feel much better after you heard this. All right. I've done a video. Check it out. Here in the channel, it's about will robots takes the jobs of the pilots or something like that. I can't remember what I called it now. But basically what I'm saying is that even if the technology to fly the aircraft completely without pilot would exist today, and it doesn't, right? That's important to know. AI hasn't reached that level yet. But even if they had, let's say that today you have AI that is good enough to do that. We're looking at 20, well, maybe 15 years to implement it into a new aircraft type that doesn't have pilots. We're looking at another 20 years, well, 15 years, let's say 15 years to test it out, okay, to get the aviation authorities to approve flight without pilots, completely without pilots, with passengers on board. So that will mean, because it takes 15 years to build a new aircraft type, and then another, yeah, I will say 10 to 15 years to properly test it out and to get all of the nations all over the world to approve it, okay? And to say that, yeah, you can fly into our airspace, you can land at our runways and stuff with this non-piloted aircraft. So now we're up to about 30 years going forward. And then on top of that, now you have the financial interests of the airlines. So the airlines, a 737 that goes into service will have a service life of between, yeah, it depends on the airline, but say 15, 20 years in one airline, okay? Now, the airlines are not going to scrap their old aircraft and just replace them, all right? They cost, you know, hundreds of millions, right? So I think a 737 is listed at about 70 or 75 million dollars, something like that. So you're not going to scrap a perfectly working aircraft just because you don't want pilots in it. So you're going to keep that, and you're going to maybe replace old aircraft with these new aircraft types that hasn't had pilots. So there will be a phasing out period that will take another decade or 2 decades to do. So I am guessing, and I've said this before, I'm guessing that the day where we won't have pilots flying the aircraft completely is 50 to 60 years away. Something like that. So my kids would still be able to be pilots. I will be pilots. My kids will be able to pilots. Their kids would probably not do it. It would probably not be a good idea. Now, I'm saying this on the background of how things works now. Things can always change. But the thing here is not the technology, because the technology will come. They will be here. We will see self-driving cars and stuff on the roads within years. They're already out there. But in flight, with aviation, there's a reason that almost nothing. I've been working for 16 years. During those 16 years, almost nothing has changed. It's the same. Loads of stuff that happened. You know, when I started, the iPhone didn't exist, right? You can see what's happened to the internet, to, you know, wearable technology, to AI, to stuff like that. But the airline business, no, nothing, because it is really, really slow to adapt new things. I hope that makes you feel better. Gamer FTV 184. Hi Petter, how much did it cost to go to Västerås? Yeah, so I was very lucky. Well, depending on how you see it, I worked my butt off to be accepted into a government-sponsored program in Västerås, which means that I didn't pay anything for my flight training. My flight training was paid completely by the Swedish state. Right? The only thing I paid for is my type rating, which cost me about 30,000 euros. Right? But there is a way to go into Scandinavian Aviation Academy that is still in Västerås, where you pay for your training, just like any integrated program. And in order for you to know exactly how much that costs, because I do not speak for them, I would advise you to go into the Mentour Aviation chat, and you just put alpha, it's in tag, scavac.com. So SCAVA, scavac.com, okay? That's a user that works for SEA, and he will be able to tell you exactly how much it's going to cost you, and also what you need in order to apply, things like that. And these are the kind of things that I do have in the Mentor Aviation app now. I have representatives for different schools and pilot students and stuff that can tell you stuff that I cannot tell you. So that's one of the reasons why you should get the app and get it now, right? Okay, so there was no more super chats there, so let's see if I can get more questions here. Let's see, take something from the Mentor Aviation app as I'm talking about that. From Cam Prout, Mentor, hello from Liverpool. In your opinion, what is your favorite first class in modern airlines today? Love your videos, by the way. Thank you very much. Well, I'm sad to say that I have never in my life flown first class. So I would love to be able to answer that question, but that's the sad thing of it. I've flown business and premium economy and stuff like that, but I do not fly first class. In order to fly first class, you either need to be really rich or you need to work for an airline that upgrades you to first class. And I do not work for an airline that upgrades me to first class. All right? So unfortunately, I can't really answer that question in a good way. This is a question that I'm getting quite often nowadays. Is Brexit going to affect licensing with EASA? I mean, a cadet pilot that graduates in the UK, will he have problems to apply for an European airline? Now, this is tricky, okay? Because I don't think so. I think that it would be absolutely idiotic by Britain to start to kind of disengage themselves from EASA, right? I think that would be a huge mistake. But then again, I think that the whole Brexit is a huge mistake. I think that they should have continued to stay part of the European Union, and I think that the British people, unfortunately, is going to notice why in just about over a year from now, when they start to see the effects of not being part of the greater Europe. So, having said that, there's no one who really knows what's going to happen. Partially because the politicians who are now tasked with trying to disengage themselves from something that they've been working for 30 years to achieve have no idea. They don't know how they're going to do this. Europe is not really keen to help out that much either, because obviously they don't want to make it a great deal for a country to leave the European Union, because then more people is going to start to leave and the whole thing will fall apart. And we will say, like we were before, with having to pass tolls and not being able to fly freely within the union and things like this. Now, so my guess is that one of the things that they will sort out before the Brexit is these kind of things, like licensing issues. And I don't think that there's going to be an issue, because I think that the UK CAA have very high rules and regulations that are well and beyond the EASA rules and regulations. So if they do get kind of kicked out or disengaged from EASA, then I would expect it to be very, very easy to convert your license if needed to do so. However, you never know. And when politicians start fighting with each other and start doing stupid things, like Brexit, for example, then all bets are off, right? So I can't, it's also very possible that you will sit there with a license that is only valid inside of the UK, at least for a year or so, until everyone has figured out what to do. But then again, we do it taking people from all over the world, from South Africa, from Brazil, from the United States, without any huge problem. So I don't think that you should be worried. No, not at all. So, Daran, I'm from India. What can I expect from a cadet program personal interview? What is the intensity of questioning? I don't know, because I've never done an interview in India, okay? This is why I created the Mentor Aviation app in the first place, because there are loads of other Indian students inside of the app chat. So, use this chat that you're asking this question on, and I can push out a question to see if there's other Indian users who are willing to help you out. Otherwise, in the video flight schools, if you go to home screen, look at the flight schools, you'll see that there's a list of different people in there by country. Go in and ask someone who is in an Indian cadetship and ask them about that, because that's the best and most efficient way to get answers about these kind of things. Right, let's see. NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory. What is the difference between Captain Joe and Mentor Pilot? Captain Joe is an Airbus pilot, then Mentor Pilot is Boeing pilot. But what are the differences? Well, to start off, we're two completely different people. All right, so I'm going to start there. I have been doing this for 3 years. I think Captain Joe started about a year and a half ago. I am not as skilled when it comes to doing computer animations and when it comes to production. Captain Joe makes better production than I do. But on the other hand, I am a airline captain and a type rating examiner instructor, and Captain Joe is a first officer still, even though I think he's on his path to becoming an instructor as well. So we have different skill sets, and my skill set, my particular strength is soft skills, that has to do with CRM, um, and to explain complex things in a fairly easy way. That's what I do best. Okay, and Captain Joe is brilliant on explaining technical stuff because of his great ability to visualize, to make visualizations of, for example, aircraft systems, flaps, fuel systems, hydraulic systems, things like that. So looking at both channels will give you a good sense of both things. While I will be focusing much more on soft skills and stuff like that, he will be more technical. So that's at least the way that I feel that we are different. Now, I love watching his videos and talk to him. I hope and I think that he's going to start uploading again soon. But in the meanwhile, I'm really happy that at least some of his viewers is joining in my channel as well. Right, let's see. Luke Scott, is it annoying to have to divert due to passenger illness that the person knew about? No, it's never, like when we divert, it's for the safety of someone. Okay, if we divert due to a medical emergency, it's to save someone's life. If this not to save someone's life, if someone is just feeling ill, but he can continue or she can continue, then we continue to our destinations. If we divert, it's because someone is seriously ill and need to see a doctor straight away, and that is never annoying. All right, they might, if they are cleared to fly by the company, means that their illness that they had and they knew about and they had some kind of doctor certificates to fly with, and this is just bad luck. So no, it's not available. Okay, so let's see if there's any more questions on the super chat, guys. Like I see, there's loads of you in here now. We're almost 350 people asking questions at the same time. So if you have a question that you really want me to answer, then use the super chat function below, okay? Because I'm trying to cover on all different channels, but I just really can't. When are you coming to India? I don't know. All right, I have this. It's an Indian company that's helping me to develop the app, Travancore Analytics. They're called. Please send them your love if you want to. So I might come and visit them before the upgrade of the app, because I'm planning a major upgrade of the app based on your suggestions. But I need funding for that. So I'm going to. Oh, that's another thing, guys. By the way, I know I've said this before, but this will happen. Okay. During the week now, I am going to upload a video that you can download in the app. It's going to be short. It's going to be only maybe a minute long or something like that. And it's only going to contain a message from me saying thank you for supporting the app, and I will hold up a letter. Okay, so that's what you will get. If you download that video, you will just get a thank you and a letter. All right. Okay. It will cost, probably going to cost €2. Okay, or $2. That's because I don't want to impose a mandatory payment for the app, but I'm going to put this in as a voluntarily thing. So those of you who wants to help out and keep funding, for example, the new upgrade of the app, they can go in and they can buy this video, and with that will come the letter and the video. Okay, the letter will form a code. So over 12 months, if you go in and you support the app for a 12-month period, you will know the entire code at the end of the year, and those of you who sends in that code will be part of a draw that's of some price. All right, I'm still looking into the price, but I think it's going to be quite juicy. So that's what I'm going to do. That's just to make it completely voluntarily for people who want to participate and want to help secure the funding of the app. Then people can do that. People who doesn't want to do it don't have to do it. You'll still have access to all of the other stuff. Right. Let's see. I see you guys are talking to each other here in the chat. That's great to see. Have you ever been to Shannon in Ireland? I've flown to Shannon in Ireland. Yes, a few times. I have not actually been in Shannon. But I've flown there, yes. Right, so the difference between gear up and gear off, I'm not going to tell you that because it's going to come up in a video very soon, maybe possibly even this week, All right, so I'm going to be talking about landing gears in a video very soon. ATPL or MPL? That's a good question. I've done videos on that as well. If you go in and you check the licensing series here on YouTube, you will find loads of videos covering both MPL, CPL, ATPL, MCC courses. I will explain what all of them are. I would say that I would choose an ATPL over an MPL if I had to choose, right? But if I had a job offer and the job offer said, listen, if you come here, you get this MPL course, then we'll give you a job, then I will do the MPL course, right? So there's not a huge difference, but of course you are connected to to an airline in a different way, at least in the beginning of your training with an MPL, that you're not if you're taking the CPL instrument rating frozen way, okay? Can your flight school determine your future, as in determine your future, from Marco? To a certain extent, yeah, they can. So if it's a poor flight school, a flight school that does not hold high quality, they will still take your money. So they will still make you pay for the services, but they might not be good enough for you to get a job. And in that case, it's bad, right? This is why I tell everyone to make sure that you please do research before you join or sign any kind of money over to a flight school. You need to know that they will provide good service. And then it's largely going to be up to you. Okay, if you go to a good flight school and you do your best and you get through that flight school, then no, then the impact will be maybe they have some contacts with airlines, others might not, okay? But in general speaking, no, they will not, okay? But if you go to a bad flight school, it can definitely ruin stuff for you. So make sure you do proper research before you start. You do not jump into the first school you see. Do not jump into the cheapest school you see, okay? Check out why they are so cheap. If you find something that is way cheaper than everyone else, you should ask yourself why. And I've told you this before. If a school offers you an integrated program below 50,000 euro, you should be very careful, right? You might still find them, right? They might still be okay out there, but I think that the cutoff point is around 50,000 euro for them to be able to be both profitable and give you high quality training and have good aircraft and be safe, right? So just keep that in mind when you start looking for flight schools. Right, let's see if there's anything more in the Mentour Aviation chat then. So Ava is in here. Ava, if you're watching this, which I'm hoping that you are, I just love the fact that you are so active inside of the app. Now, Ava is an Airbus pilot, but she's flying private jets now. Falcon, I believe. I think so. Anyway, she's very experienced. She has loads of experience of different types of operation and different aircraft types, and she's almost always inside of the application as answering people's questions. She's making a huge contribution to the app. I'm really appreciating that, Alva. I really do. So SMA Tube, hi Mentor, I have scoliosis on 17 degrees offbeat spine and my dream is to become a pilot. Can I be pilot? I'm also near best at math. Okay, though now I've done a video when it comes to medical stuff, and what I'm basically saying in that video is that I'm not an aeromedical examiner, so I can't tell you what kind of medical condition you can fly with and what you can't fly with. All right, what you have to do is you have to go and you have to Google Aeromedical Center in, I'm guessing, Denmark. They will give you an address and a telephone number. I want you to call them and I want you to set up a meeting and I want you to go there and I want you to bring your medical files, show that to them and ask them, can I do this? You know, can I go through the test or is there no point? They will be able to give you a straight answer. Maybe they will even be able to tell you that over the phone, all right? But you need to speak to an aviation medical professional. You can't speak to a pilot because they will only give you guesses. That's why I can't really answer the question. But Aeromedical Center, there is at least one in every country. Contact them and they will know what to do. All right? Best of luck as well. Love Chennai. Hi Mentor, I live in the US, but my dream is to work for British Airways. How do I get a legal permit to live and work in England if I want to work for BA? Yeah, I mean, you are going to have to get, well, you're going to have to speak to your what's it called? I lost the word, guys. No, but you have to contact the authorities in your country to see what you need in order to apply for a visa, a work visa to work and live in the European Union. Well, it's going to be in the UK in the next year or so. And once you have that, you can go over and you can apply, for example, for their future flyer program or something like that. However, I would consider, I don't know why you want to work for British Airways exactly. All right, I hope it's not just something that the way they look or the way that the aircraft types they have. You have loads of really great airlines in the US as well that you should be considering, first of all, to make your life a little bit easier, because remember, there's thousands of people already here that are applying for example, British Airways. So it might be tricky for you to get yourself a work visa, go over, do your training, and then apply for British Airways directly. However, everything is possible. You can definitely do that if that is what your ultimate dreams tells you to do. But you will have to speak to your own government to see what kind of work visas that you can get. I don't think that's a big problem though. Do you watch aircraft crash investigation shows? Yeah, I do. It was a long time since I did last now, but I do put some of them that I think are really important into the Mentour Aviation app as well. So, yeah, I do. It's important as an airline pilot to try to learn from other people's mistakes or technical malfunctions and see how they handle that very well. So I do from time to time, but I wouldn't say that I do it very often. It kind of bums me out a little bit. Do airlines prefer integrated ATPL over modular ATPL? Very hard to say, right? At the moment, most airlines are just taking what they can, right? They might have special deals with special integrated schools, and in that case they do. But in most cases, as long as you have your papers ready and you can, you fulfill all of the requirements that the airline might have, then it doesn't really matter. Okay, let's see then. We're coming up to 50 minutes here now, guys, so I'm going to round this up very soon. Every type of video. Hey, can you bring the photo behind you closer so I can see it? By the way, it's question for men from the app. Yeah, I guess so. No, not really. I'm gonna have to bring it off the wall if I'm going. Let's see. Let's the computer a little bit to see. Bring it up here. Yeah, that's me. I was maybe 23 or something when that was taken. There's a friend of mine who was a photographer that I went there and visit, and he wanted to take a photo, so he took that one, and I thought it was kind of cool. So yeah, that's me. Right, guys, and on that bombshell, I think that I'm going to kind of round this up a little bit. If anyone has any more questions, you can put them into the super chat right now. Otherwise, I will tell you once again that please get into the Mentour Aviation app, download it. I'm sending out push notifications when I do YouTube live streams, when I do, yesterday, for example, I was there for half an hour after midnight to answer questions. And obviously, if you have the app and you've enabled push notifications, you would have known that, so you could have spoken to me and asked your questions already then. And from time to time, for example, Captain Joe has been inside of the chat talking to people as well. So I'm trying to get more people, there are loads of actual pilots who are there answering your questions. And yeah, my goal is to make it into a truly global aviation community where you can go. Anyone who has a faint interest in aviation or wants to become a pilot can go and they can find unbiased, positive and constructive answers to their questions rather than pee-prune or something where people are going to vent and be negative about things. This is a positive place, right? It's a positive atmosphere. Join it with that spirit and you'll find that it's going to be a really nice place to hang out in. Cool. So that's it, guys. Continue watching the channel. Continue telling people about it. If you haven't already, I'm guessing you have already subscribed. But if you haven't, please feel free to subscribe. And have an absolutely fantastic evening. And I'll see you. Well, my new video is going to come up on Friday. I'm starting to release my videos on Friday now, guys. And the reason being that I'm working my butt off in my current job. And Fridays I am off, so I am able to kind of fix the videos and upload them for Fridays. So it's going to be on Friday evening. I'll see you then, and then there's going to be another live stream, obviously, next week again. Have an absolutely fantastic day, and I'll see you next time.